You're all set.
Okay, thank you. Hello all. We're back again. We did have some technical problems last time, so if I crash out, my colleague Carrie Mocyk will jump in and take things over. But for now, I'm Douglas Hemphill. I'm one of the campus instructional designers, and we're going to take a quick look at groups. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is jump into a specific course. And immediately right at the top of your screen, you see the option to create groups. Now, groups are simply a way to separate students in a class and give them controlled access to certain things. Most commonly is probably for group discussions, where you create an individual discussion for each group and then give that group access to it, or for group assignments where everybody sees the assignment, but only one person in the group has to submit it. And when you grade, those grades will be pushed back to everybody else in the group. So once I go into my groups, the first thing I need to do is create a category. As with many things, this is kind of a bucket for a set of groups. So if you're only using one group throughout an entire semester, this could be something very generic like groups, but maybe you've got two projects and each of those has its own different group members. That's where categories become useful. So I'm going to go ahead and create a project 3 category. By default, students don't see the description, so I don't usually worry about it. Now, enrollment types, there's a few options. The first one is basically manual enrollment. I say I want to create, let's say, 3 groups. It will create those groups and you will manually enroll the people. The rest are automated options. So in this case, I would tell it, I want to create groups with 3 members, and it will go through and create enough groups to accommodate that. Now, it always rounds down. So if there aren't enough people to break into that number of groups, it will create one group with fewer people. So if that's okay, that's fine. Otherwise, you can go in and manually move those 2 people into other groups. Now, this is just the other way around, where I tell it I want this number of groups, and it will divide the class as evenly as possible among those. And then you get into self-enrollment options. These are a little more specific, where basically students have access to a page that tells them, hey, you can sign into this group, sign into this group, sign into this group. So it's great if you have something like, let's say, a series of topics for paper and people need to choose their topic. You could create a group for each one of those topics and students would sign up for the topic they want. Generally, you don't need to worry about this enrollment restrictions. And then when it says group prefix, this is, since I'm making it automatically create groups, it's just going to say, okay, what are these groups going to be called? So I'm going to call them Project C, and it will create Project C1, Project C2, Project C3, etc. Couple options, auto enroll new users. That means if people add the course late, they'll automatically be added to the group. Randomize users in group. If you don't use this, it will go by the class list. So it will take the first 5 people, drop them in group 1, the next 5 people, drop them in group 2, etc. There's not I don't think I've ever seen that be used. Usually you're either manually assigning them or you let the system randomize them. Again, this would only be used if you need students to see the group descriptions for some reason. And then these are just a couple of options. So I can have it automatically create discussions for students. I can set up lockers, which are basically like a shared file space, though usually I find it easier to just let students use their own Google Drives. Or I can set up set up assignments. Honestly, with the assignments, I tend to prefer attaching the group directly to the assignment after the fact. Discussions, though, it really can be useful to have it handle the discussion automatically. And it will either create a new topic, or I can even attach this to a specific topic, as long as there's not been any activity in that topic. Once I've gone through those options, I just save it, and it's going to tell me it'll take a few minutes, but I've never had it take more than like 30 seconds. And as I say that, this is honestly the first time I think I've ever seen that message. Usually by the time the screen refreshes, it already has the list of students. Okay, so I have 4 students in this course, so it automatically gave me 2 groups, each with 2 members, and I can see it's attached to this discussion. If I need to, I can always go into one of these groups. I can rename the individual group. Don't touch the group code, though. I actually don't even know why that's an option to change that. But you can rename the group. So I could name one group Red Jays and another one Bluebirds. More importantly, though, I can enroll users or view enrollment. So I can see, okay, here's the people in the group, or I can enroll users and see everybody in the class and whether or not they're in a group. This is also the same that you would see for manual enrollment in groups. Now, there is this search option here. This can be useful if I'm enrolling in people in multiple courses. Enrolling manually for an entire class, because what I would say is don't show me students that are enrolled in a group already. And then when I hit the search icon, so I have to search the little bar, it would only show me people that are not already enrolled in some other group. Now, in this case, everybody's already enrolled, so there's nobody there. So I'm just going to clear that search and cancel out of this. So at this point, I have my group. At any point, I can go back to the groups tab and see my groups. I can jump between the different categories I've created. So that's one thing to know. When you go in, it'll always show you the first category you created. And if you want to see your other categories, you have to jump to them. And then if I want to link something to an assignment and I didn't do it when it was created, I simply go to, in this case, I'm going to use an assignment. And if something is already attached to a group, it'll have this little icon for that it's a group assignment. So I'm going to grab one that's not and edit that assignment. And right on the right-hand side, I just go to, okay, somebody, once an assignment has been submitted, the assignment type will be locked. So apparently there's already been a practice submission on that one. Which is interesting because oh, there it is. Okay, I'm just blind. Oh, well, this one has submission, and it'll tell you at the top some settings have been locked. Oops. Oh, wow, I'm doing really well at clicking on ones that already have submissions. Okay, there we go. So you simply see assignment type by default, it's always going to be individual, but I can quickly change it to a group assignment and assign it to whichever group category I want to assign it in. And that will automatically give each group in that category basically its own Dropbox space. For discussions, it's very much the same thing. This time I'm just gonna tell it to create a new topic. You'll see right at the very top, is it an open topic or is it a group topic? And if it's a group topic, I just tell it which group I want it to, which group category I want to have access to it. And then when I go to that discussion, I'll have the option of which group I want to see within that category. So I think I misspoke earlier. I said you had to create a discussion for each group. That's not true. You create a discussion, then the system creates an individual area within that discussion for each group. So I apologize for that misspeak. I must have been having flashbacks to an unnamed previous system. So last but not least, groups can be used for communication options. Just check something quickly. Okay, no, it's not available through there. So if I go to my messaging alerts and go into my email system and compose a new email, when I go to my list of who do I want to send this to, okay, I'm there. I can filter by a specific group and then just grab everybody in that group. And there it is. Believe. Thought there was another. Oh, yeah. So I can also, if I'm looking at my list of groups, if I put a check mark next to an individual group, I can email the members of that group directly, in which case it does it as a blind carbon copy. So that is the quick version of groups. Once you know what's going on behind the scenes, it's pretty straightforward. But as always, if you have any questions, we're always available at help@oswego.edu or via our office hours.
Doug,
Okay.
there is one question
I'm
in the
looking
chat.
at it. Way to copy existing. Don't. No. I don't think so.
I didn't think so either, but I thought you might know a good tip.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a really big class, we can talk to Kathi Dutton and maybe there's a way to upload groups as a flat file, but I'm not, it's not a question I've had before, and
It would just be kind of useful sometimes. My intention was to randomize every project, but then a few groups were working really well together. So I wanted to keep those guys, but then switch up the enrollment in only some groups, but I wanted them to have access to their original groupings as well. So
Yeah.
anyway, It was just more complicated than I intended it to be, but the workaround was a little tedious. But thank you.
Yeah, basically, I would just do side by side and grab each group and do
Yep.
it that way. But yeah,
I just basically wanted a button that was like, copy these groups, and then you could sort of manually rearrange them after that.
yeah, no, not that I'm aware of. Sorry. Any other questions, or Carrie, anything that you can think of in terms of hints, tricks, or things I might have missed?
No, I was just digging around too. I'm not seeing anything either to assist in that area. I think you covered everything pretty well.
Okay, then that wraps up our instructional design and Brightspace sessions for today. There are another series of sessions tomorrow morning, which will be run by Kathi Dutton. So if those are of interest to you, stop on by. Otherwise, have a great day.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yep.